everyone. Welcome back here to Techstrong TV. I'm really happy to introduce you to this next fellow. He is the co-founder and CMO and a guest here on Techstrong with us. His name's Kevin Green. Kevin is with a company called Happix, and their website, so you know off the bat, is Ask Happix, ASKHAPAX.ai. So you can check that out. But first, let's talk to Kevin. Kevin, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Alan. Glad to be here.
So I got to be honest with you. I interview a lot of founders, a lot of co-founders. I don't often interview co-founder CMO. And I'm not ragging on CMOs by any stretch. But when you look at the normal, you get your CEO, CTO pairing, right? So you get kind of two techie guys sometimes. And, the VCs always say, hey, you got to go find a sales marketing person, right? Mm-hmm. Or sometimes you'll get a CEO, CRO, right? So, and they're a salesperson. Sometimes the CEO is actually the sales or marketing person. So, but it's not often co-founder CMO. How did this come about? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah. So, the Happix journey started several years ago, and I've been part of the company since its founding. So the original concept for the product and kind of what we're trying to do really started with me and a couple of other people. And the story behind why we're doing this is equally as important to the quality of the product itself. So, there's so much happening in the space right now. There's so much happening. There's so much news, and the hype cycle is so significant that controlling that narrative and making sure our message is getting through and cutting through all of the noise that's out there is equally as important as, the features and capability of the product. So understanding that how we communicate and talk about Happix is equally important. That's why we've made it such an important role here at the organization.
I love it. So give us a little of your journey, though. What did you do before Happix? As you mentioned, is a few years old already, but what did you do before that?
So I've actually, I've kind of started out in communications. I've always kind of found myself on the bleeding edge of technology. So when I first started, it was, kind of the .com boom, and then kind of rolled the social media wave through that, and then had a bunch of, SaaS startups. Then did some time at Fortune 50 organizations leading digital innovation for global organizations, and just the passion that comes from working in a startup and building something new and really driving change based on how quickly technology is moving was something I couldn't resist, and that's kind of how I find my way back here to Happix, is to kind of do that run all over again and bring something new to the market that's truly going to make a difference.
Very cool. Very cool. I actually just wrote an article yesterday. There was an article in Business Insider. In spite of all the talk about AI taking jobs and costing people their jobs and how marketing is one of the hardest hit areas, communications is one of the most sought after positions. Yep. From Fortune 50 on down, with crazy salaries, right? Mid six figures and above for, chief communication officers and people who have that real skill. Not that they're not using AI. They want communications people who can leverage AI, but they need to have that human spark, that human creativity, that AI doesn't yet bring, for sure. Yep. And they're in really, really high demand in spite of everything else we're hearing about these things. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So every co-founder I speak to, there's always a creation story around, we saw this problem and it wasn't being solved, or it wasn't being solved well. And we think we had a better mousetrap. We could build a better mousetrap. We could build a better solution. What was that for Happix?
Well, Happix actually was born out of the recognition that AI is going to create a lot of disruption, for sure. But there was already a ton of disruption happening in our financial industry anyway. Technology and the digital transformation around banking has been significant, for years. But this new wave, this new cycle was a big risk. And we saw that. We got out in front of it because we know that people are adopting AI. It's not going away. Exactly what you said, the fear of job loss, but the opportunity is significant if it's embraced correctly. And that's where we saw a huge gap, was in a regulated environment. Generic tools that are being built for consumers don't translate well into highly structured environments where governance and accountability and scalability are going to be critical. And so we felt like we needed to fill that gap because it's absolutely imperative that we maintain consumer choice in our banking structure. So technology is consistently putting smaller community banks and credit unions at risk. And when that happens, it actually dramatically impacts what happens in these communities. The large global institutions are not going to extend your loan because they know that you had, a bad agricultural season. They're not going to give a small business loan to somebody who's, aspiring to open a restaurant. That happens at the community level because community banks understand the impact and what that means. And so our standpoint was we have to give technology to these financial institutions that help them compete with less resources, less technical capabilities. So it had to be simple, it had to be easy, it had to be secure. And that was just a gap that big tech was not thinking about. They're looking at, again, it's the old model of, attract as many users as you can as fast as possible, worry about profitability later. We recognized, we've got to get governance systems in place. We need to make sure that there's accuracy in place, and that we're helping these institutions navigate through this wave of innovation and come out the other side healthy and strong and able to compete.
I love it. And I don't disagree with you. My experience is when you get these waves, right, like surfing waves, and you look at the surfers in the wave, the smaller guys, they kind of fall into two buckets. There's a group that are more nimble than the really big guys. And so they are able to outmaneuver, out agile, if you will, and ride the bleeding edge of the wave. But when you ride the bleeding edge, it can cut both ways, right? And you get that. And then you get others who say, look, we just aren't going to have the resources to compete with those bigger guys, especially in an unknown wave, right? And let's see how that wave develops before we go all in, if you will. But they got to do, the thing about this AI is it's different. I don't know if you could wait on AI.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
You can't. I mean, there's absolutely no waiting on it. And, if you go back to 1999, when everybody was, rushing and they had to have a website, you couldn't wait then. But in 1999, we had no idea what was coming. If you think about where we were and everybody was standing up a website and we were measuring success based on eyeballs, we couldn't tie that back to real revenue. There was no, it became a race for how much traffic could we get. And we're kind of in the same place with AI where, we don't know what's coming yet. But in 1999, you knew you couldn't not have a website. And where we are today is, you can't just ignore AI. It's not going away. Where it's going to go, that, anybody who can predict that, I'd love for them to tell me the secret, but, it's moving.
They're probably not on the show talking to you and I. They're out, resting on their island somewhere.
Exactly.
But, Kevin, it's interesting you bring it up. As I was talking to you off camera, I helped take a company public during the .com, and we did all of that good stuff. And I do see a lot of parallels. A lesson I learned back then was the bubble bursting wasn't because the technology didn't work. The technology was great. The bubble bursting was a financial technology because people went all in, giving anyone with who had a .com, right? Pets.com. Some of these blue ribbons that I invested in, everything with a .com. They were attracting crazy money. Now with AI, I try to say, where are we in that cycle right now? And as near as I could tell, I think we're still in 96, 97
Yep.
right
Right.
now. We're probably a whiles out from, that financial bubble bursting, if you will. That doesn't mean it won't. It doesn't necessarily mean it will in 2 years or 3 years either. But that's kind of how I peg it when I look at that time frame to this time frame. But the other things that we're seeing here, and Kevin, this first 4 years of this AI boom has been financed on the hordes of cash that the hyperscalers, the big tech guys have been sitting on. I mean, they've been sitting on it since before COVID. They were building up war chests. And so all of these AI data centers and buying all these chips and a lot of the research and the circular investments has been, off of that hoard. But now we're seeing that second wave of companies that are financing AI with debt, with VC money, with other people's money, as we say, right? OPM. And, it's a kind of a different space. It's a different rhythm, right? That money has to have returns, have dividends within a given amount of time. It's not free money, certainly. And it's going to be interesting because there will be a reckoning. I'm not saying the bubble's going to burst. I'm not saying it's going to be exactly like the dot-coms or some of the other. Look, we had a real estate bubble in 2008, right? The mortgage bubble. I'm not saying it's going to be exactly like that. But what I'm saying is the financial side of this is so overheated. Sooner or later, the music stops and someone doesn't have a chair.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And I think even your timeline is right in terms of from the financial aspect. The interesting is, societally and where kind of the technology is, it's very reminiscent. You probably remember, but I don't know if you were a football fan, but it was the 2000 .com Super Bowl where 20% of advertisers were .com companies.
You saw it this year.
Did you watch this year?
Yeah, yep. I got to tell you, the what's her name? Claude. It wasn't the lady was from OpenAI. The I guess Android, whatever you want to call it. But I thought the Claude commercial was great, but it got panned. A lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was a great commercial.
And they all were. I think there's. But we had 24% of commercials this year were AI companies. And
I know.
We've labeled the 2000 Super Bowl as the .com.
So this is now the AI Bowl.
This is the AI Bowl.
But here's one thing I found out. The Budweiser commercial with the eagle's wings flying over the horse, not AI.
Yeah.
Not AI. It was real, all natural, done. They just caught it right.
Yeah, I love that. That was my favorite commercial. But
yeah, me too.
but we're seeing kind of the same thing. The technology is moving so much faster. But even in that, that correlation, to your point earlier, the internet didn't lose. Like the bubble may have burst financially, but the internet still won. And when the music stops, there will be less chairs. And that's kind of what we think about from Hapix's point of view is the ones who won were the infrastructure, the ones who transitioned to, not just thinking about new features and new functionality, but they went directly into how do you start to get measurable ROI? How do you, really build something that's scalable, and move just again beyond the next feature. And we're even seeing it. If you think back to, again, that timeline, there was a race on features. You had, the Yahoo versus Google. Now we've got OpenAI versus Anthropic, which we saw in the Claude commercials, specifically going after ChatGPT. So we're seeing these same parallels. And, for us, we wanted to pivot to how do we make sure Hapix becomes infrastructure before, instead of getting caught up in the feature race, because even ChatGPT, how many people are actually using OpenAI's Atlas browser? Not a ton. That launched in October. last year.
Well, to be fair to them, how many people are using Perplexities or some of the other ones? I don't know if, and I'll tell you why. So I'm a geek, just probably like you are too. That's why we do what we do, right? You probably downloaded Atlas. You checked it out, didn't you? Yeah, so did I. Yeah. Because that's what we do. That's why you and I are on here. But you still using it?
No.
Me either.
Yeah.
Why? Because it wasn't a killer app. I didn't see anything that said, oh my God, I'm going to stop using Chrome for this or Safari or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But that's tech, you know. You gotta kiss a lot of frogs until you find your princes here or princesses or whatever you're looking for.
Without a doubt. And you could even make the correlation to the mobile movement. Remember,
Yeah.
everybody was mobile first, and there was a new app on the number one on the App Store that you had to have. And then, now, I mean, was the average person uses less than 20 apps consistently on their phone?
Yeah. But I still have 150 on there, and whenever I go to delete one, I say, but I might use it. I might use it, right?
Oh, totally.
6 months later, discipline is the word there, Kevin.
Yeah,
Discipline.
I've got some that are like older than my kids. So
yeah, you and me both. Let's look out 6-12 months. Do you think? Because, at the rate of because that is one of the big differences between this AI and the .com, the rate of evolution here, like we used to talk about internet time, remember the crunching of internet time? Well, AI time crunches internet time, right? So the maturation is just crazy. Looking out over the next 6 to 12 months, what do you see? What's in store? I mean, are we going to have little banks, community banks?
I mean, from our standpoint, absolutely. We think that, this technology allows smaller organizations to compete, and that community banks and credit unions are well positioned, because one of the biggest challenges that comes with AI is the operationalizing of it. It's making sure people are educated. And, we've done surveys, 57% of banks say that they are AI mature. AI maturity is not, well, everybody has a license to ChatGPT or Copilot. That's not maturity. So
no.
What we're trying to do is help people operationalize AI and truly kind of reimagine some of the workflows that currently exist to do them better. And to our earlier conversation, smaller, more nimble organizations are going to find success faster as long as they operate with discipline. And that's the thing. I mean, Amazon survived all of that. I mean, remember, they were losing billions of dollars a year, and everybody was criticizing everything they were doing. But in the background, they're building logistics infrastructure. Everybody thinks they're an online bookstore, and that's not what they were doing.
Right.
And so, and I'm not saying we're the next Amazon by any stretch of the means, but that mentality, it's, thinking about it that way as organizations think about how this is infrastructure and how it changes their operations versus it being assistants and chatbots. Those are the ones that are going to win. And I think smaller organizations are going to be able to pivot, pivot to that type of approach faster.
Love it. I love it. Kevin, I mentioned the website was askcapex.ai. What advice would you give people? What's the best way to engage with y'all?
Yeah. So, I mean, certainly, people can reach out. We obviously can multiple contact methods on the website. But one of the things that we did do is recognizing that enablement component. We did build a free AI certification specifically for bankers that's also accessible on the website. Our mission really is AI only works when people truly understand it and embrace it from the top down. And it has to be, you have to understand it through your own unique context. So your role, your industry, your business, general education and training, while helpful, doesn't translate into execution. Obviously through the website is the best way to reach out to us. Taking advantage of the tools and the resources that we put up there, hopefully will help people start to pivot away from, well, we have a chatbot, so we're AI native, to we're organizationally structuring ourselves to make sure that we can operationalize around AI.
I love it. Hey man, the 15 minutes goes so quick. I'm sorry, but we're out of time. Kevin, come back. Keep us posted what's going on here with Hapix, and I wish you all the best.
I appreciate it. Great conversation, and definitely look forward to coming back.
All righty. Kevin Green, co-founder, CMO of Hapix. That's at askhapix.ai. Check it out. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll come back. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Eric Fourrier, who is CEO of it's GitGuardian,
GitGuardian, yeah.
GitGuardian. All right, try that one more time. Here we go. Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Eric Fourrier, the CEO of GitGuardian, and we're having a little chat about keeping secrets in application development in the age of AI in the wake of them picking up an additional $50 million in funding. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. Hello, everybody.
All right. So, you guys have been at this for a while, and I think the landscape is fundamentally changing, though, with the rise of these AI agents. So, what's your perspective on what's going on here? Because a lot of people are they're not sure. Is this a new type of identity that we need to keep secrets for or from? Or is this just a non-human identity that will manage much like any other non-human identity?
Yeah, it's a tough question, Mike. I think when you think about it, it depends on the workflow, but it's a bit of both. So when you think about it, like you take an AI agent right now, it's the reality is like every company right now is trying to deploy AI agents, and an AI agent to be efficient, it needs to have access to data. You need to have access to different data sources. Could be your CRM, could be your product data. And to get access to the data, it needs credential. So it needs API keys, it needs tokens. And because what's lacking right now, it's very hard to identify an AI agent and get access to safely to different resources. So people are doing it the old way, which is giving them secrets, which is a huge problem when you think about it, because it's accelerating the secrets pool, so secrets end up like leaked everywhere. And that's what we've been doing at GitGuardian for the last 6 or 7 years, is trying to look for the secrets that are leaked in every systems and to make sure attackers cannot use them and to protect our customers. And yeah, AI agents have drastically increased the number of secrets used and the number of secrets leaked. And there is currently no way to safely secure them. And that's really like the big problem we're seeing right now.
Those AI agents, how good are they at keeping secrets? Because some of the people I talk to say the guardrails aren't so good, and they're about as effective at keeping a secret as your average 5-year-old.
That's a good question. So on that part, it's really interesting, because at the end of the day, especially if we look a little bit at coding agents, so it has evolved a lot over the past like 2 or 3 years. So when the first model of OpenAI started 2 or 3 years ago, you could actually with the right prompt, it was super easy to get like actual secrets from the training set. So because these models have been trained on a lot of open source code, and inside this open source code you have a lot of secrets and credential. You could actually get like credential from somewhere else on from a request to the model. But hopefully it has evolved a lot, and now the coding agent you have a little bit more guardrails, they are more powerful, but the real problems come from the person using the LLM. And that's, I think, the whole danger of vibe coding that a lot of people are underestimating right now. It's really you have people that are non-developers, could be marketing people, could be sales people, could be ops, like could be people that have no training in software engineering, that have no idea what is credential and how they should be managed, that now are able to vibe code application. And that's usually them making the worst mistake. Even if the agent or the LLM is not doing them, it's the human that will introduce a vulnerability. So you have this combination of both, like an experienced human with like these coding agents that push you to be extremely fast, and like you have this, the hype of the trend that forces us to say, okay, we need to adopt fast all these new tools. We need to release this AI agent to our employees, but we need to do it fast. So we just, we don't put any security guardrails. So the combination of these three things, which is untrained people, push to the velocity on the code, and the absence of any security guardrails, make it a critical issues for secrets and for companies right now.
Yeah. So I think 50 million is still a lot of money, even in the age of AI. But what is the plans, or what do you think guys thinking about investing that in?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. I think for us, it's on two sides. So first is expand our current go-to-market operation. So GitGuardian was created in France, but we have a very unique story for a French company. Like our first customer was US based. We now do 70% of our business in the US. North America is our fastest growing region, but we really started like having reps in the US only 2 years ago. So we have 25 people right now. We see a tremendous traction here. So we definitely want to double down in the US. And at the same time, over the next 2 or 3 years, there is tremendous opportunity. And we have already customers in Asia, so Australia, India, Japan. So we also want to open new region, both in Asia Pacific and also on the Middle East. And on the other side is product. Like as you've seen, like AI agents, the pace is so fast. There is new innovation, new type of agent, and new type of vulnerabilities almost every 3 months. So we need to keep the pace and build more and more product so we can help our customers safely deploy AI agent while securing like the credential, and really try to make them more safe and really give them the ability to deploy them and enjoy the velocity and the ROI while being also safe at the same time.
Is this whole shift to AI going to exacerbate an existing problem? Because I think a lot of developers aren't very good at keeping secrets themselves. They might be slightly better than the AI agent, but it seems like one's just going to compound the other. So what do we need to think about doing here to kind of protect our secrets?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think definitely every coding agent is making developers like more productive. So give them the ability to write more lines of code. So if they're already, which is the case, you're right, already leaking secrets, it's just accelerating the problem. So it's why you need, shift left has been so important, has been really important in the past 5 years, but it's even more important right now. Is like we should equip developers as soon as possible, and we have tools that are really strongly suited for the agentic workflow for coding agent on the laptop of the developers. So it's basically developing a series of tooling and product that are very close to the developers, so you can help him write more secure code and avoid leaking credential, but also build like awareness and educate them on how really they can safely manage secrets.
Will we maybe have an AI agent that will go look for all our secrets at some point, and that will just be part of the DevOps workflow?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think on that, that's a question like we have asked ourselves at GitGuardian. So we have our own detection engine to detect secrets, and like can we use an AI to do it? For now, the economics is still not there because, especially for our customers, we need to scan like terabytes and sometimes petabytes of data when we actually look for secrets in huge data sources like SharePoint, Google Drive, all the Jira tickets, all the Docker images, just so much data to scan that at the end of the day, you cannot send everything to an agent, or otherwise you will pay like OpenAI or Anthropic like tens or 20 millions of dollars to scan your data. So it's where you need like products like GitGuardian and be smart about it. We call it hybrid detection. So it's a combination of a first step that's a deterministic engine, and the second step that's really like we use also AI in our product to do prioritization and to help our customers better remediate the secrets. But at the end of the day, the first stage is needs to be deterministic, fast, and able to process a lot of data that for now LLMs are not able to do.
Do you think the bad guys are going to get better at using AI to find our secrets? And this may be a big part of the problem going forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think like the big issue, and it's an issue that has already existed in cybersecurity for a long time. It's which exists in life. It's always easier to destroy stuff than build stuff, and it's exactly the same for cybersecurity. It's the job is unfairly easy for an attacker to do damage compared to the defender, and yeah, AI has accelerated that a lot. Is like, unfortunately, now with AI, the attackers have the ability to they will scan the company data for if they enter into a system. They will scan the system for secrets, and after they will probably use an AI to ask like, okay, what are the most important secrets? What are the secrets I can use to move laterally and do more damage? And unfortunately, LLMs are very good at that. So that's why it's so important. Like, it's what I always tell like customers and prospects is like, now we need to move into a world on zero trust on your data. So you need to consider if you have like secrets giving, I always say giving the keys to the kingdom and giving a lot of access. You need to consider that they are going to be compromised because you will get breached, an attacker will get in, and with AI it can be what would take like 10 days of scanning secrets, evaluating them, trying to find the right way to enter into a system can now take like minutes, tens of minutes. So yeah, attackers are now incredibly powerful with AI.
What is the relationship between the application development teams these days and the security folks that are nominally responsible for all these secrets? Is that getting better? Because historically they've always kind of been two ships passing in the night a little bit. But are you seeing more collaboration, and what's driving it?
Yeah, again, a very good question. I think it's the relationship you're right has always been like it's almost like you had a wall between teams. But I think, and it's really my vision for GitGuardian in the next year. At the end of the day, like the problem of secret security and non-human identity security has become so important that you need to first you need to have a product and a platform to address it. But at the end of the day, like for us, like we need to have like the application security folks, the identity players, the developers, the DevOps, like teaming together to solve the problem. It's not the responsibility of one team or the other. At the end of the day, it's like you need, and that's why it's so difficult to build, and that's why it's so valuable. Is like you need to build a tool for every persona and for every type of people, but at the same time give them the ability to collaborate together. So I think they have no choice. The problem is so important that it needs to be tackled from multiple angles. Developers need tools inside their development workflow to avoid leaking secrets. Application security teams need a holistic workflow and dashboard to be able to map all the issues and focus on what's the most important and the most critical piece. And identity folks need to provide a way to help on the remediation, making sure we have like secrets manager in place, making sure we have short-lived tokens and identity. And it's a teamwork. At the end of the day, you need to work in teams. And that's how we see the future with GitGuardian. And we were going to orchestrate all this workflow from, detection, prevention, remediation, and governance and hygiene. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be long, but yeah, that's where we see the value, and that's our mission.
So what's that one thing you see teams doing that just makes you shake your head a little bit and go, folks, we got to be a little bit smarter than that?
Yeah, I think a great question. I think like the big shift I'm seeing, and I've seen it, from the early days of GitGuardian. When I started GitGuardian, so we started with public monitoring. So GitGuardian started, the first product of GitGuardian was like we were still very known for that. Is like we find like secret exposed on public GitHub. Like which is today probably one of the most critical vulnerabilities. You have your AWS secret, you have a database secret sitting like on public GitHub, so everybody in the world can see it. So very dangerous. And in the early days of GitGuardian, people were like, I understand the vulnerability. And I was trying to educate people on like, but and you also probably have secrets in your internal code base. And that's also a big vulnerability, because if an attacker can find it, it can make damage. But people were arguing like 5 or 6 years ago, but it's in my internal code base, so it's safe. It's behind my internal firewalls and systems. And, the world has shifted because, code has been designed to be shipped, distributed into binaries, Docker images. So people realize, definitely if I have secrets in code, it's going to be super easy for an attacker to find it. So it becomes a strong vulnerability. And I think now we are at the stage where even where places where we thought it was safe, especially on the laptop of developers in environment variable, you have especially on all the vibe coders and even developers, you have so many secrets sitting on the laptop and on places where you say, I think I'm safe. It's not that bad. But right now with all the AI agent and all the open doors and all the suppression attacks we have, even these places where we thought your identities, your secrets were safe, are not safe anymore. And I think for me, it's one of the biggest, attack vectors I see right now. It's, the laptop of the developers, because, you have so many secrets, you have so many privileges, you have so many AI agents giving access to data sources. It's a treasure for attackers to just see them. And the issue right now, it's also what I was saying at the beginning is now you have people that are untrained, that are non-developers, that are beginning to code, that are beginning to get secret, that are beginning to launch applications. So it's just expanding the threat for company at a pace which is very hard, and that they don't have the current security tools to secure right now, because nobody has thought that the person at the marketing was going to be now installing software, building software, having secrets, having a database, and it's a total new domain and new attack surface to defend for companies right now.
All right. Well, folks, you heard it here. If you think your secrets are safe, well, think again. Hey, Eric, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. And back to you guys in the studio.
Control, this is Agent Dev. I'm in position.
Copy that, Dev. Stand by for go.
Standing by.
Hey, welcome everybody. You have joined another great episode of Agents of Dev, the podcast where myself, Mitch Ashley, and my co-host, Brad Shimmin, both of us from the Futurum Group, analysts in our respective areas, always talking about software development, what's happening, what we're working on, but also mostly what the vendor community is working on. Brad, good to see you again. How's it going today?
It's good to see you, Mitch. Enjoying this glorious spring. Oh, wait, we're a little ahead of that. The presumed coming of spring in a month or two. Yep, just doing good.
Spring wasn't very springy yet, so we'll have to wait for some more spring to arrive.
A bit of an Arctic blast, as some would say.
That is for sure. That is for sure. I think we're getting some more snow this weekend or something. They're talking about it. We'll see what happens. Nothing like what you've seen, of course. So
that's crazy.
I think we should do a podcast about every other day, maybe going to every day, because it is just that freaking insane. I mean, there's that much stuff happening. And you had the reason why I kind of set it up that way is you have a new segment you want to introduce, which kind of speaks to this. So tell us about what you want to do.
Yeah, we want to try to corral all of what's happening that we think is important and useful in the marketplace. And to do that, as Mitch says, we would be doing this every hour on the hour. But because we don't have the ability to do that, and we wouldn't test your patience with that, we instead have decided to go with a new section we call the call outs. And this is a segment that will be at the beginning of our podcast where we'll just take a moment to talk about something that we see a vendor in the markets that we cover doing something we think is useful. And I'll start us off if you don't mind, Mitch.
Great. Absolutely. Please do.
Okay, so as some of you who follow the research practice that I'm working in, wherein I, for example, am talking a lot about the semantic layer right now and the importance of that across the board, not just for BI tooling and data scientists, but for everybody. We have been following this idea of the semantic layer as being needing to, and it did start within BI solutions as a means of saying, what does this business term mean? And what does it mean to different people? And that's important because you kind of have to have consensus. And as we talk about on our podcast, having that ability to have that ground truth of meaning is critical for agentic development. So I say that as a starting point to give a bit of a clap for Microsoft. They just released to GA a sort of evolution of an existing tool they built a while back called Semantic Link. This was built basically to sit inside of Jupyter notebooks and allow them to my favorite place and allow them to basically build and work with these semantic models or semantic layers, I should say, and coordinate with Power BI. So you didn't have to treat them as two separate environments. Well, with this update, they've actually now they have conjoined this within their entire Fabric platform. So whether I'm a data scientist, a BI professional, or a data engineer, or a software engineer, or an agent, I will be able to work with these semantic models and change them to make create new models, to create new data products, if you will, and to have those available to and reflected across the Power BI group, the Fabric group, and my own group that I'm working in if I'm building out software. So I think that's terrific. I'm glad that Microsoft is evolving the technology that they have and not just trying to reinvent it.
Kind of what's old is new again. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, Hey, take what's working and extend it into this new environment.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a lot today, actually.
We are. Yeah, I detect the theme coming on. I have a couple, one tiny one, or not tiny, but one short one. Atlassian GA'd their, I think it was into the last month or first part of this month, their NCP server for Rovo agents. Basically, they've opened up through Rovo, whether it's a queryable interface or for the agents, all the information that's in Atlassian's applications, primarily Jira and Confluence, where a lot of it is what we use. So it can be for operations, it can be for development. And of course, I think that would benefit from a semantic layer, something that they've talked a little bit about. But I think the thing of it is, it kind of reminds me of this. I was on this project called Project Alexandria, and it was all about the library of Alexandria.
Did you have a library? Yes.
No, we were going to assemble it. Well, it didn't quite work out. But anyway, it's kind of what we're doing across the board. Google has made available all their documentation to agents to be able to use for technical documentation, user information, data for the business. So huge trend, I'm sure, not news to you, but that seems to be more and more sort of a cost of doing business is opening that up. The second one, just to not take up too much air and oxygen out of the room, is kind of hit the airwaves pretty big, is Entire, this new company that was formed by the former CEO of GitHub, Thomas Domke, and everybody was kind of wondering what did he lead to do.
We were a little worried when he left.
Yeah, we were like, well, what's going to happen? Well, guess what? Again, something you will love, and I think all of us appreciate is you think about software development and all this interaction we do with models to create it. And what gets lost? What's the exhaust? It's all the interaction, the prompts, and everything that we talk with. Whether it's through scripts or predefined prompts or interactively, that stuff just kind of falls by the wayside. And we have an artifact, but we don't quite know how it got created or why it got created. And that's essentially what he started out with this entire a open source project called Checkpoints, which basically you connect into your GitHub and it tracks everything that you do in terms of capturing. You have to install something locally too, what your prompts are to whatever model that you use. And A, it's a great idea. B, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I call it the plumbing of what he really says he wants to do. And I believe this is true also, is if we are going to generate massive amounts of code, just like we can't scan it all for vulnerabilities, we can't, as humans, sit there and review all of it. That's just impossible. We don't even know why we're reviewing what we're reviewing. So this kind of semantic layer is not just for humans, it's also for agents. So it knows what got created, why, how that ties back to what session, who, what the requirements were when we defined that spec or whatever it was that drove it, or the idea came off the internet, whatever it was. Now we've got some traceability back to that, but I think it's a lot more. I think the code windows of our IDEs will eventually fold into agent interfaces. I've described it as, more like StarCraft kind of game interface of managing all the agents doing all these fun
Yes,
stuff.
you had me at StarCraft.
At least I hope it's like that, something like that. So anyway, good stuff. I mean, again, center your world, semantic, data, knowledge. It's that's the fuel of AI and what we're doing.
Indeed it is. Yeah. And it's actually funny. This topic relates to what I want to talk about in the drop at the end of our show, with agent context decoherence. So yes, it is timely to me.
Very good. Well, let's get into our main section, our main topic. We wanted to talk about Anthropic published I didn't want to call it experiment. I didn't want to call it research, even though it was a company blog post. We could call it marketing. We could call it whatever, but it's by a technical person.
And a repo. Don't forget.
And
there is
actual
code.
And a repo. So it must be legit, right?
Exactly right. That is our measure.
Got our t-shirt. We got a repo. Okay, we got a blog post. We are legit. We got a company. Let's rock and roll. So anyway, they did this. I'll say the word experiment. It's not experiments in a classic science. I mean, it's not independently tested. It's not isolated. Yeah. It's they said, what could we do? Let's solve a really hard problem. Let's pick something like, could we create a C compiler? Now that's an interesting problem because it isn't an unknown. We know what a C compiler does, right? It's very been around for a long time.
But it is a Herculean task, is it not?
But it is a massive task.
A human endeavor, like going to the moon, building a compiler, is not that far apart.
Except this has been done. This is like going back to the moon, right?
Oh yeah, right.
And the I mean, I could cite the numbers of how much code was generated. It was a massive amount of code, and they used long running multiple agents that they coordinated through Claude.
Just 16, thousands of agent swarms, as we've been told would happen.
That's more than I can manage because I only have 10 fingers, and my toes are too far down to use to count. So you're entering interesting territory there. But one of the real telling things was how much human direction and intervention and engagement it took to get there. So it wasn't here's a really well-defined spec, which you could do with a C compiler. Go for it. Go build it. No, it took a lot of direction, and that's not a negative. It's just the state of where we are. This is a guided process. You still have to engineer a solution with AI. It's not going to totally do itself. Yeah, maybe it can create the snake game. So what? That's not our interesting problem.
A product.
We have 1 million snake games running around on the internet.
Indeed. Yep.
But from a social people engineering perspective, I'm curious what your reaction was to that thought experiment, whatever we want to call it.
I think that they know how to market quite well. They understand the things that we care about. Practitioners care about things in practice, I should say. And so what we're getting from them is, in this case, actually something that's a long-running experiment. This isn't just I decided last weekend to do it, as we had with Claude Cowork.
Over the weekend.
We had a great discussion about that. But this is different. This is something that this fellow, who's been famous for doing a lot of adversarial red teaming against AI, has been running as a long-standing experiment to see where Claude is in terms of being able to handle these very complex, long-running tasks. And what I found interesting about this is, and as you just said, it is very much a human-led endeavor. And we had at Futurum, basically when we did our 2026 predictions, we said, we feel that for most endeavors, for me, for example, data professionals or data engineers and such, that they're not going away. They are instead transitioning into becoming what I would term as an AI shepherd, a individual who has deep domain expertise, great skill, as you might see with like a business analyst, to define problems and to, in what we're seeing in this case, is to create a sort of set of tests and a harness to run the test within and the development work itself, and to sort of manage that using the tool chains that we know so well, vis-a-vis Git in this case. And it was fascinating to me that what it showed us, or it showed me anyway, was that yes, it is still human-led, but the thing that's interesting is that it's human-led for agents, meaning the person isn't trying to do things the way humans did it. The person is trying to create this infrastructure that does things the way agents do them. And so, for example,
point, Brad, give an example, because they didn't tell it how to do things. They said, do the following, and it figured it out, right?
Well, you're right. But what they found, for example, is that agents all tackled the same problem repeatedly over and over again. And so to, sort of do two things. First was to give them the ability to say, I called shotgun. I got dibs. They built he built a locking mechanism. It's just a very simple text file. It's like a library card to check in and out the books. And the second thing, which is really a testament to how all of our technology is built upon the shoulders of giants and the shoulders of the giants that came before them, and that is to use GCC itself as a reference point to basically say, okay, the things we actually need to worry about that are broken, this is what you need to focus on. The rest, forget about it, because it's compiling under GCC, so don't try to fix that. That's like, did we do that before for engineering? I don't think so. That's a different way of looking at it.
It's there is an approach. It's a very unique situation there with GCC. But there is approach of, there's some things that I'm going to assume, right? I'm not going to worry about the Java runtime engine, right? That's pretty much a given. I'm going to worry about these things. But let's don't boil the ocean and try to go reinvent a bunch of stuff. I'll use open source. I'll do whatever. But that kind of goes out the window with AI, because AI would love to generate a new Java runtime engine for you.
It would prefer to, yes.
It would prefer to. The thought I had about the agents kind of doing multiple things is, I think they forgot to introduce the agent to this thing called a Kanban board in sprints, where everybody goes to the board and says, I'll take that feature, that story, and I'll implement that. That's the shotgun version of it. So we kind of need to teach agents that, there is a way of managing your work, which I think is a whole big area of, it isn't just orchestrating, defining a linear process. It's just like, you have to teach AI, how is it going to work with itself? And sometimes those agents aren't going to be the same vendor. It's going to be other systems.
Right. And with interdependencies, some in real time, some asynchronous, and you need, tooling to actually manage that flow in parallel. And Kanban boards are a great way to do that. And is it not a tool that's available on Git now, from GitHub now, to do that? And so I would presume that as we go forward, whether it's, the CEO creating his own system, or it's GitHub evolving on its own, or Codeberg, or all of these repository management platforms, they're all going to be, I think, tooling for both the human and the agents, or the AI, as two, combined, but somewhat different tracks.
Well, imagine, I wasn't joking when I said the UI of the future, I hope it looks like StarCraft. But imagine in that UI of the future, it's some souped up version of a Kanban board that you're watching as AI is doing the work, picking out things, going through the process. This is one, this is the human one, Mitch is going to do that, whatever that
Save
process
this for later.
looks like. Yes, exactly. Don't go down that alley. That's a dark alley.
Right.
Let's go back here.
You're going to get mugged. Don't go down there.
Yeah, there's danger down there. You don't want to mess around. But something like that, where you can interactively as well as autonomously see what's happening and also direct where it needs to direct in real time, and then if you take the kind of the entire idea, all the semantics of what happened and why can then be applied to learning to how to work better, how to perform that work better. We started here and we ended up with this. How did we get from A to Z? Well, it's actually Q. Why did we end up at Q? We were going for Z. But there's so much to take, and we try to learn that as humans. We can't learn it all, but we have to help the AI learn it.
But that is something that we humans, I think, are very unique at, and that is being able to pick out the wheat from the chaff, to split the two, I should say, and to find what's most important in looking at a lot of information. And it's ironic a bit that, as LLMs are much better than humans at scanning and keeping in context, the much more information, and yet they really suck at trying to pick out what's important. and I think with this, Anthropic example here with the compiler, that he discovered that as a big problem, and so he changed the tooling so that it wasn't just publishing the entirety of an error or even a log file. It was just, okay, let's build another, I call them epicycles, because for planetary motions, how do you explain retrograde? You just draw another circle.
Escape velocity and retrograde.
Exactly. It'll all work out. Newton would be happy. So it's basically saying that, okay, we need to have another layer that sort of modifies the artifacts that are created as a part of this process of building software, so that we can better work with those assets in a more efficient and reliable and consistent manner. And that's what I think this points out with that example that he discovered, is that, okay, you can't just throw everything in a 1 million context window and hope for the best.
Or 16 of them, yes.
Right, 16 million tokens running around simultaneously.
So this leads me, I wanted to get your opinion about this. It's only February, right? I mean, we're into the second month of the year, but looking back last year, very much was, a big theme was MCP and A2A and ACP and a lot of open standards, if you will, open source, open standards.
Yeah.
There's still very much that vibe that's happening concurrently. But I think we've advanced to the next phase of evolution of how we're creating software, where we're seeing different kinds of innovation and levels of innovation that stand alone still. So, for example, how Claude manages work, right? It's not tied into some open standard that everybody's agreed how to do that, right? Everybody has said, Microsoft, here's our agent hub, GitHub, and you can bring your agents to our environment, right? So we're very much creating these ecosystems of work and development. Not saying they won't be able to work together, but we haven't come to why we're all sitting at the same lunch table at school. We should talk to each other.
Let's decide
we're working on the same problem.
This. All of us. Yeah.
But we're kind of evolving to, will we suddenly all go off and, speaking of your planetary, will we all kind of, lose gravity and be thrown off into the galaxy, or what's going to bring things back together? Certainly customers will, but I'm just thinking through those kinds of constraints, because when we change constraints, things change drastically.
They do, don't they? And I think, just as we've discovered with LLMs, they whenever their training cutoff is, they really like to run home to mama. And we as humans do the same. And I think we saw that in this experiment from Anthropic, for example, and that, he could have, set up some new MCP to sort of be that harness. But instead, the harness is just a freaking bash file, that just runs till, Ralphs it till it's done. And that is a verb now, by the way.
Yes, ralphing. That was something different in college, but in AI, ralphing is a different
yes,
thing.
and right. There are different pronunciations too. You need to stay far away from. But the point is that I think this is a testament to the whole GNU Linux mentality, or as we currently would call it, the suckless mentality. Which I'm not saying that jokingly. That's an actual thing. That you build a piece of software that does one thing really well, and we see that with tooling like rsync. And show me a server that's running the internet that is not using rsync. Just for backups and synchronizing file changes. And why would we reinvent that wheel? Why would you go out and create a standard to solve a problem that our engineering minds 40 some odd years ago solved?
And it's still, humming along today, just kind of like the semantic model with Microsoft, your example earlier.
Indeed,
It worked well for that. Let's, apply it to this problem. rsync has lived on and on and on.
Yep. It's like building a space station to get to the moon, and then to use the moon to get to Mars.
We'll have to do an episode on space. Maybe we can get what's his name, Tyson, the guy at the planet.
Oh yes, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah,
yes,
deGrasse
love
Tyson.
It. I'm sure. Yeah, he follows us. I'm confident.
I bet there's an email waiting for me. He's asking if he can be on. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, well, I think we've probably done enough damage on these topics, so we can go to our last segment for the podcast episode called The Drop. All right,
my
welcome
drop
back
this week. Yeah,
yes.
Sorry, Mitch.
Go ahead.
I'm going first because I'm really frustrated by this, and it is this idea of agent context to decoherence. And I've mentioned, I think, when we've chatted before in the projects I'm working on, I feel that the larger the code base becomes, the more likely you are to fall off what I call the edge of the plateau of happiness that you're on. Where when you make a change, the change is enacted and it works the way it does, and it doesn't create any other problems or downstream issues you're unaware of. And I still feel that is a big thing. But what really, kind of captured my attention recently is just how that applies to all the artifacts that we work with, not just the code base. And so, I think as the ex-CEO of Git is showing us that we need some smart systems for managing those artifacts. And for me, one that I didn't really pay attention to, because it's just so natural to say, make a memory, in working in whatever CLI you're working in, agentic CLI, to say, make a memory of this so you remember for later. And what I ended up doing was something called context poisoning. I poisoned myself, unbeknownst to myself, about how to do Git committing, do Git commits, because I had made a skill for that, and then made a memory on how to implement it for different projects, so I could use it consistently across projects, because that's what you do, because we're lazy.
And make file. It kind of put me in a
That is exactly it, right? That's the point of that. And so I didn't. So lurking, hidden within, not just the skill I made, but the memory. So the agents.md or whatever you guys are using was an instruction that the model was like, oh, wait a minute. Brad said to do this in the skill for committing, but earlier you said in the broader agent.md file that this is what I need to do, and it went all HAL 9000 on me. That was not
isn't the repository you're looking for, Brad?
I'm sorry, Dave. I can't open that repository. Yeah.
So how did you poison it? You have to tell us. You can't leave us hanging. What did you do? Did you drop a little, arsenic in there and like, oops, that wasn't supposed to go
I
in
literally pulled out the grep or fgrep and just found what I was, the poison pill, and removed the pill.
Yeah. Well, that's good. At least you knew what the source was. You found what that was like. Because
there are only
five things combined. Suddenly it's hallucinating.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And,
something.
These are hierarchical systems. And so when you're working across different projects, you have your root agent file, or if we're in OpenClaw mode, it would be your sole file. Then you have files for each of the projects you're working on. And I only had like 4 of them, but it was a testament to the need to curate and maintain that memory that your models have, along with your skills, along with your extensions, in concerts, because the minute you introduce conflicting truths within that, the models are going to get confused, because that's how they work.
Yeah, very much so. Well, cool. That's interesting problem, and I think all of us are experiencing it multiple times, sometimes more severe than others, right?
Yep. This wasn't an RM removal file system. Yeah, it was not that.
Make sure you have your permissions set appropriately, and no, sudo is not a good thing to hand to the agent. Sudo, sorry. Sudoku, no, different thing. So my drop is, and this is coming your way, by the way, so this is a little bit of a heads up that you're going to get to peer review this for me. But I've been working on it's kind of my layer cake framework of agent controls. Frameworks, agent control planes. What do we mean by that? Because it may not end up being called that at some point, but that's a lot of what are the innovations that's happening around, whether it's managing agents, whether it's directing work of agents, whether it's security guardrails, compliance, agent behavior, observability.
Yep.
And I think one of the very cool things that's happening is a lot of things we would have done later, like security and like observability and all that, because we're in this age of AI, can be easily integrated into the development process, to the kind of interim, it's not quite ready for prime time, into production. So a lot of things are combining into this one phase of development in this one quote unquote platform. So I've got a reference framework. I'll run it by you, and you can rip it apart and say, like that, get rid of that. This is stupid. That's kind of okay. This will make it better. And I appreciate your input. So,
yeah, I'd love that. And you're right. The whole control plane idea is so critical. And more so than it was. We used to have a lot of control planes, right? So like in the MLOps space, you're always striving for a control plane that wrapped those different guards and rails and controls and audits into 4 specific areas of interest. And right now, the systems that we're building, I think, are much more multifaceted than that, and you can no longer think of a control plane as being specific to a given area of work. It has to be specific to the solution itself, and broadly the company itself.
Yeah, it's not like one business domain, like we're developing machine learning algorithms.
Yeah, exactly. That's the data scientist problem. They'll deal with
it. Let them solve that. But you're creating it for a system that's also evolving, right? So how agents work and what they do and what the protocols and what the open standards or the work we're going to have it do could be very different in 6-12 months or maybe a month from now. So it's an interesting problem to solve. But I think there's some really good ideas out there, what vendors are doing.
Agreed. And a lot of them built back in 1982. Thereabouts. It's the high watermark for me in cultural terms. But yeah, I mean, the old ideas, as we were saying, are never truly old. They become new again. We either like engineer our way into something new with them, or we find ourselves with enough compute horsepower, for example, to do the things we couldn't do before. And so you can never turn your back on the past. You have to honor it. You have to look to the past to create the future.
Look, you can see so many examples. Think of Linus and Linux, and the early work has spawned a whole set of great things. So often there was a reason why those were good things, good decisions made back then. Maybe constraints and situations have changed, but there's still things we can take from it. Maybe verbatim, maybe not. Of those,
good database management systems, as an example, those were like the reason why they were created was to get around the constraints of performance and scale, and the lessons we learned about things like ACID compliance to be able to make sure that when you write something that gets written, little things like that are still true today.
I think we should still be using ISAM files, but that's a whole nother topic. So anyway, no, I'm with you on the database.
Wow. Yeah.
Throwing one out to you there. Okay. And re-indexing everything all the time.
Indeed.
Well, we better stop before we get down one of those dark alleys that we can't get out of. So look forward to more great things. Please check out Brad's work that he's doing at Futurum. You can go to futurumgroup.com/Brad-Shimmin.
Correct.
And everything, that we do that's freely available, you can download there. There's some things that are part of our internal or our client system that we use called the Future Intelligence System. There's a lot of good things there, of course, too. But please check it out. Mine is the same as futurumgroup.com/Mitch-Ashley. And, we're kind of publishing like madmen. There's so many things going on we want to talk about. And not just report the news, but understand.
No, we're trying to think about them.
Why is it news, right?
Right. Put them in context, wrap them in our decades of cynicism, and try to come up with something helpful. That's what we try to do.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening, watching. And we appreciate comments. We appreciate folks that have reached out to us. And we hope you'll, of course, share this with your friends and follow and do all that we can. We have folks that we're going to be bringing on. We're talking to different people.
Yes.
Brad and I have got, I think, a good enough rhythm going. We could, keep ourselves on track with a third party involved.
I'm not sure about that, but I think I'm willing to experiment.
Hope springs eternal. So we'll be doing that. So thanks again for being part of Agents of Dev. We appreciate being part of the development community with you. Take care, everybody.
Control, this is Agent Dev. I'm in position.
Copy that, Dev. Stand by for go.
Standing by.
Dell nods to Nutanix. AI ramps up cybercrime. Cisco wants to unseat VMware. Checkpoint is making AI security Voltron. Google's buying the sun. Social engineering our comrades. And we go full Zoidberg in our closer look in this week's episode of the Tech Field Day Rundown. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Tech Field Day Rundown for February the 18th. My name is Tom Hollingsworth, and who has two thumbs and appreciates thumbs on Thumb Appreciation Day? That's right, it's this guy. We're very happy to have you joining us, and I'm very happy to be joined once again by my co-host, Mr. Alistair Cook. Al, good to see you.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here, and both of my thumbs are very happy to be here too. I also would like to remind you that it is Hockey Stick Salute Day today. So for those of you who are playing hockey here, field hockey is more common than ice hockey, but take the salute.
Yeah, the hockey stick salute sounds like something you do to somebody you don't like. But luckily, we like all of you. So what we're going to do instead is bring you some great tech news that you're going to want to check out. We're starting off with a story because Dell Technologies has expanded its private cloud portfolio to support Nutanix, which is giving customers more freedom to choose how they virtualize workloads alongside existing options like VMware and Red Hat. The move reflects a broader shift in enterprise IT as organizations reassess cost, licensing, and risk tied to single vendor hypervisor strategies. Initially supported on Dell's PowerFlex systems, with PowerStore integration coming later, the update emphasizes operational consistency through Dell's automation platform, allowing customers to change or mix hypervisors without replacing core infrastructure. By formally incorporating Nutanix into its private cloud framework, Dell is positioning itself as a neutral infrastructure foundation for hybrid and on-prem environments that continue to grow more complex. Al, are we seeing Dell diversifying their opportunities to sell to customers who might be looking to make a move?
Well, I think that's absolutely what's going on, is that we're seeing lots of discussion around what should I use to replace the VMware that I was using before, now that VMware doesn't care about the smaller implementations, doesn't care about anybody who's not a VCF customer. So bringing Nutanix in here, bringing the hypervisor that Nutanix has in their hyper-converged absolutely fits into that. And we know that Nutanix and Dell have been partners for a long time. There's been a sort of uneasy piece in that at times when Dell owned VMware. Now that Dell doesn't own VMware, it's very easy for Nutanix to come in as the hypervisor of choice on these medium-scale environments. A couple of things that I like in here. One is getting towards having that power scale as an option as well. We do see criticism of HCI in being a good general purpose platform, but when you need a highly tuned environment, maybe you don't want HCI. So yeah, definitely seeing some of those challenges around higher performance applications being addressed by having higher performance storage as an option, obviously in combination with HCI for the general purpose platform. One of the interesting things I see in this also is that Nutanix has a story around using their Prism UI for managing everything end-to-end in a Nutanix-only environment. And that brings a little bit of a challenge with the Dell Automation platform that's a key part of this offering, where the Dell Automation platform is designed for day 0 to day 2's deployment, lifecycle, ongoing operations. The discussion in the Dell blog around this is that your operational teams will continue to use the Nutanix tools they've used for potentially years, and that leaves me to wonder where the Dell Automation platform fits into it, since it's such an important part. I think what we'll see is that when that Power Store capability is added on, then we're looking at an environment that Prism can't manage by itself. And so there will be value in having a slightly more specialist set of people using the Dell Automation platform. One of the criticisms, though, of course, will be a continuing criticism of Nutanix, that the cost saving is not so much as you might have thought, because the licensing cost for the Nutanix component may be significant. We'll see whether there is a special deal in here that makes that pricing more friendly to customers over time. New research from Quorum Cyber shows that AI and white-labeled ransomware as a service platforms are reshaping the threat landscape. New ransomware groups growing by 30% per year, and attacks shifting from encryption to faster, low-cost data exfiltration. Steal your data rather than hiding it from you. Security leaders warn that attackers, from criminal gangs to nation-state actors, are automating up to 90% of intrusions, shrinking detection windows and lowering the barrier to entry, particularly with that ransomware as a service. Executives from BugCrowd, SailPoint, Qualys, Profit Security, and Cowbell emphasize the need for AI-driven security operations, better vulnerability disclosure, least privilege identity controls, and a whole lot of other things like layered defenses, because cybercrime is becoming increasingly easy to get into and industrialized in its application. This continues to be, we should be as good at IT as we say we are, doesn't it, Tom?
You would hope so. The problem is that the things that we're coming up with now make the other people really, really fast at doing it. We saw this for the last couple of years when it comes to data protection. They were trying to lock up everything and do it on the sly, so that by the time you realized that you'd been hit with a crypto locker, it was too late and your backups were probably dead, because they were one of the first things that were targeted. In fact, I saw a stat today that said 93% of attacks go after the backups at some point. But one of the things we're also seeing is the response in the data protection market that says, we can detect when things are being encrypted because of entropy detection, which is like part and parcel now. So we can slam the brakes on that. So now, instead of making a big fuss about locking it in place, they're trying to sneak it out the back door, because, they already have a pipe to get in. After all, they did get into your defenses. But I think the other thing that's really important here is that you need to understand this automation system. When you get into a system to figure out what you can do with it, there's usually a lot of trial and error, right? Can I escalate privilege? Do I have any kind of lateral movement options? Is there a way for me to compromise the system to, provide remote access in the future? You got to start thinking like an attacker, right? This is a foothold. What can I do while I'm here? Well, the thing about all of that stuff is that it is automatable. I can try some basic privilege escalation. I can try to install a remote access Trojan to be able to get back in. And those are the kinds of things that these attackers want to do while they're collecting information. Because one of the things that we know for a fact from seeing these gangs that are operating, in some cases they're nation states, is that human resources are expensive because they need to be dedicated to doing certain things. So if I can have an automated script or program kind of do the basics, and then, did we get past the first line of defense? Oh, great. Now I need to insert the name of everyone's favorite hacker here. I don't know which one it is, but you now have the opportunity to kind of do a little bit more on this. I can expand where I'm at, and then I'm not just sitting here poking around on a system going, well, I keep hitting walls. This is kind of the same idea behind, if you've ever dealt with a telemarketer. Usually the person making the phone call and talking to you on the other end of that line, they are not the salesperson. Their job is not to like basically work with you to close this deal. They're literally there to dial telephone numbers. And if they get a hit, if they get someone who says, I'm interested in whatever service you're offering, that's when you get transferred off to a different group, because that's the actual salespeople. They are too expensive to be dialing phones. They are there to close deals. So I think we're starting to see that, as you said, and it's democratized now. Everybody can do it, but that also means that we're rarefying the air so that the human resources are focused very much more on exploitable systems and not just, oh, you left a back door open, but you really can't go anywhere because of zero trust or least privilege or something like that. Cisco is preparing to launch NFVIS for UC. It's a narrowly focused hypervisor designed specifically to run on Cisco's unified communications applications, giving customers an alternative to VMware as licensing changes under Broadcom may push organizations towards more expensive VMware Cloud Foundation licensing bundles. This is built on Cisco's existing NFVIS platform, and it is limited to Cisco hardware and collaboration workloads. The new hypervisor reduces external dependencies while maintaining performance and support control. At the same time, Cisco is expanding support for Nutanix's AHV hypervisor and continuing to promote FlashStack with Pure Storage. That's giving more customers flexibility as they reassess virtualization costs and strategies. While VMware does remain the dominant partner at the high end, NFVIS for UC offers a pragmatic option for organizations whose virtualization needs are really tied to Cisco's collaboration tools. Al, this kind of goes back to the story we talked about earlier. Is Cisco looking for a way to potentially offer options to customers who don't want to pay what everyone is calling the Broadcom tax?
Yes, in simple words. Cisco would like that money instead of handing it to customers handing it to Broadcom. As a little bit of background on this, there's a couple of things. One is that I worked with a customer a while ago who was migrating from an all VMware environment to Nutanix AHV. But they had to leave some VMware around for some of the products that they were using for collaboration that were only certified on the VMware hypervisor, that were not at the time certified on AHV. And so this is that little window that is absolutely being addressed. There's specialist hardware or specialist software that requires, in particular, near real-time access to CPU memory resources, can't cope with being descheduled because the latency hit that comes from it. This particular solution from Cisco, this network function virtualization infrastructure software, NFVIS or NFVIS for UC, Unified Compute. So running on their Blade servers, running a specialized hypervisor just to run their collaboration software. Maybe this is as an option as customers are choosing to use other tools, other platforms for their VMware replacement. We definitely saw these customers who were coming up to renewals for their low-spec VMware products, so getting the VMware vSphere Foundation product. When upsell came or when renewal time came, the only thing that Broadcom was offering them was the VCF. These customers who wanted the lower end products, they finally were hearing what Hock-Tan had been saying since he started acquiring VMware. I care about the largest companies only. Everything else is not worth my time. This is absolutely what customers are starting to hear or continuing to hear. So having options around running some of your business critical applications on things that aren't VMware Cloud Foundation will be vital for organizations. And this is, again, one of those places where the vendor of that highly critical software, in this case Cisco, is providing an option to host still in virtual machines. I have to go back to physical hardware for everything, but a specialized solution for this use case. Part of that's because Cisco still wants to partner with everybody, and so they're not at this stage offering their general purpose solution for a hypervisor. That seems to have passed away at the moment. Maybe it'll come back again. And another element of our continuing the same stories from a different point of view, in response to the accelerating AI arms race, Check Point has unveiled a new prevention-first security strategy designed for this AI era. According to Chief Strategy Officer Roy Caro, AI innovation is outpacing security teams, forcing enterprises to rethink how security is designed and operated. This strategy is built on 4 pillars: protecting distributed hybrid environments, securing digital workspaces where humans and AI interact, delivering continuous and context-driven visibility, and safeguarding the full AI stack from models and data to agents and infrastructure. To support the shift, Checkpoint acquired Cyclops Security, Cyata, and the team behind Rotate, and integrated all of these capabilities into an open garden platform, designed to work alongside existing security ecosystems while enabling safer AI adoption at scale. I really would like to see more companies adopting AI safely, Tom.
So would I. I want to go back to those 4 pillars real quick. I'm gonna modify them real quickly. Protecting environments, securing workspaces, delivering visibility, and safeguarding the full stack. Does that sound familiar to anyone out there? It really should, because that's what I like to call in the IT space basic security. I don't care who's doing it, specifically if it's an agent or a person. I don't care if it's digital or offline. What's new here is not what Checkpoint is talking about necessarily in this release, but it's what we're dealing with all over the place. And it's actually something that we talked about on an upcoming episode of the Security Boulevard podcast. The time between when a system can be scanned, fingerprinted, and exploited has been drastically shrunk because AI has accelerated our capabilities of doing that. If you've seen any of the news, you know that systems like Claude Opus can uncover massive numbers of vulnerabilities in a very short amount of time that are probably not publicly reported. So you have to get back to those fundamentals of how do I prevent this from becoming a problem? It's not just that I need to keep the bad people out from exploiting the things that they can touch. It's what can you do to contain them when they get in there? And I think that that's where this value comes from. Because you're putting together tools that have pieces of the solutions, whether it's Cyclops Security or Cyata or any of these other ones, you've got to start looking at what it takes to slow them down. Because a lot of companies in the security space are really good at making a point solution. Yeah, we can protect your login information. Well, what happens when that fails? It's not our problem. We don't do that other stuff. You need to have a comprehensive solution. And if you don't, you need to find somebody who does. Whether that means putting your own comprehensive solution together with multiple different tools, or buying into somebody who's already done the hard work for you, in this case like Checkpoint, you've got to, because AI has effectively shrunk those windows to nothing. And I reference a great presentation from my friend Justin Warren from many, many years ago, back in like 2013, 2014, something like that. It's like cloud, right? Because the value of cloud is not infinite resources. It's absolute static predictability. It's going to happen the same way every time. It's going to take the same amount of time every time. Well, in AI's case, it's shrinking that window to be smaller and smaller. So if your defenses aren't up to stuff now, you're going to find out very quickly how unfortunate it is when people can get past them. Our friends over at Google have signed 2 15-year power purchase agreements with Total Energies to secure 1 gigawatt of new solar capacity in Texas. It's underscoring how AI-driven data center expansion is accelerating investment in those pesky renewables. The utility-scale projects in Wichita, 805 megawatts, and Mustang Creek, which is another 95 megawatts, will deliver roughly 28 terawatt hours of electricity over the contract term. Construction is slated to begin this year in 2026. The deal, which is the largest U.S. renewable PPA Total Energies has signed, reflects a broader shift among hyperscalers towards using long-term clean energy contracts to anchor new generation, bolster grid reliability within everyone's favorite ERCOT, and support sustained AI and cloud growth while limiting emissions and cost volatility. Al, did Google finally figure out that maybe using the star that's 93 million miles from Earth that won't burn out for another 5 billion years might be the best way to provide power?
Well, I think they'll just be looking at the numbers. What's it going to cost us? What's it going to cost us to deliver the amount of power we need to run these massive AI data centers? And how can we ensure we have that power for the lifetime of the data centers we're building and that we have certainty of what we're paying? ERCOT, the Electricity Reliability Commission of Texas, will be looking at this and saying, I'm glad we don't have to build out a network to deal with that massive power requirement, because that would cost an absolute fortune, which again comes back to Google looking at how much it's going to cost them to run this data center or this collection of data centers. This follows on from a 1.2 gigawatt deal with Clearway, which was signed up in January. That one covers Texas, but also Missouri and West Virginia as lots of places that are being built out for these locations or for these data centers. Of course, Clearway is 50% owned by Total Energies, which is this new 1 gigawatt deal that's come through as well. So these are big deals. The French company, Total Energies, maybe some interesting thoughts about using an offshore company to do these things. Maybe we'll see some more of these deals being signed in other places around the world as well. Google has been committed to using environmentally safe or sensitive power generation for a while. They are expecting to head towards net zero in terms of their carbon footprint over time. And it's very much at odds with the build out of these massive AI data centers. Power is one thing, and power is very important. You can't run these data centers without power, but that power is energy. That energy's got to go somewhere. Cooling is vital. As we're seeing these build outs of massive AI data centers, the big challenge is going to be finding the water to cool them, because you can't cool these things with air, particularly in the heat of a Texas summer. Water supply in Texas is going to be a real challenge as these data centers are being built out. Look for some contracts around water to follow. A Ukrainian cyber warfare unit says it ran a fake Starlink registration service. They tricked Russian soldiers into handing over sensitive data. This comes from the 256th Cyber Assault Division, and they partnered with open source intelligence groups to promote Telegram channels and bots that claim to whitelist Starlink terminals after access blocks, so the embargo against the Russian use of Starlink. This ruse instead captured terminal details and precise locations for all of these connectivity sites that the Russians were using as a way of communicating with their teams and with their drones as they're invading and attacking Russia. The incident highlights how contested access to satellite internet, in particular Starlink, has become as a front line of the cyber and information warfare battleground, which is very much related to the physical battleground that's going on in the Ukraine. This is some interesting social engineering going on here, Tom. They must have ended this program because they're talking about it now.
I think they achieved their goals with this program. And if you were hearing that, it sounds like an explosion. I think it's very interesting that Ukraine is very much fighting a different kind of an asymmetric war here. So, yeah, as you brought up in the story intro, one of the things that happened almost immediately after the 2022 invasion was that Ukrainian soldiers noticed that the Russian army was using Starlink terminals to provide satellite communications. Because one of the things we learned very early on is that the communications gear that the Russian army had was not up to par, to the point where they were literally using cell phones in the cockpit of their airplanes to be able to call stuff in. Well, that caused the people at SpaceX to say, well, why don't we just blacklist all of the terminals in Russia that are not approved to operate, which would mean, like the Ukrainian government has given authorization for these terminals and stuff like that. And then, of course, as all things happen in war, you have people who adjust to the new normal. In this case, it was people who were buying those satellites and maybe even like on third-party marketplaces, and then using them, but not registering them, obviously, to a location in a war zone. And so the Ukrainians are looking around going, well, they're still using Starlink. Well, how are we going to fix this? And they went back to what I consider to be one of the earliest forms of sabotage, which is social engineering, right? So they said, hey, you've got these Starlink satellites that you obviously want to use, and it's really tricky to get around it. Why don't you just join this Telegram channel, which is very Eastern European to do, and just give us the details on your Starlink terminal, and we'll help you register it and make sure that it's operational. And of course, just enough people bit off on it that they're like, oh yeah, sure, here's the details and everything. Well, if you have the ID of a Starlink terminal, you can track it. And you know what they do when they track it? They make it go away. And so I'm sure that what happened here was that either these positions were overrun, or more likely, there was a drone or an artillery strike that took them out. And the Russian army has nobody to blame but themselves, because I get it. Like, you need to have solid communications, but that's the reason why most militaries make a huge investment in using their own custom private communications gear. One of the things that I think we're going to be studying a lot in the years to come from the conflict that's going on in Ukraine right now is how quickly both militaries have pivoted to using what we consider to be consumer grade communications gear, because it is more reliable than what they already had. And it's easier to fix when things go wrong. If you blow up a Department of Defense satellite terminal, it could take weeks for you to get a new one. If you blow up a Starlink dish, I mean, you probably have one delivered in about a week. And so it's interesting to kind of see the interplay here, because I think that there's going to be a lot of fallout from this as defense departments all over the world kind of adjust to what new capabilities are and how they can utilize them. But also, if anybody on a Telegram channel asks you to give your Starlink terminal ID, I'd be a little bit suspicious of that. All right. It's time for us to take a closer look. Please put on your bibs and get your drawn butter, because we're going to be talking about lobsters. The open source Clawbands project aims to restore human oversight to OpenClaw, which was formerly known as Moltbot, which was formerly known as Claudebot. You know, the wildly popular autonomous AI assistant capable of executing shell commands, modifying files, and accessing APIs all on its own. Clawbands was created by software engineer Sandro Munda and intercepts every tool call and enforces a human-in-the-loop approval before actions are executed, creating an auditable decision trail. The project emerges from concern amongst security researchers and CISOs who warn that OpenClaw's rapid adoption, deep system access, and messaging app integrations are creating a massive attack surface. As agentic AI accelerates, and with OpenClaw's creator Peter Steinberger having recently joined OpenAI as of Monday, Clawbands represents an early attempt to balance innovation with pragmatic risk management. Al, I'll be honest with you, I was literally thinking about this morning when I was recording an episode of Security Boulevard, but I kind of want to start off with you. We have seen essentially for the last 3 weeks the rise, fall, and rise again of this agentic AI system. Do you think putting a human in the loop is going to make people feel more comfortable?
It'll make them feel more comfortable, but one of the things I saw as I was reading about Clawbands is that when your bot wants to apply a new skill or access a new resource, Clawbands will stop the bot. It will just do nothing. It will be absolutely stopped until you authorize that particular access. And this is where we get kind of some interesting challenges in this, because you don't want your bot to be completely stopped. This is kind of putting an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff in some ways. This is thinking about things sideways, because what we're doing is we're saying, I'm going to add some governance to the bot that requires a human to authorize the bot to do anything risky. What we know for sure is that the humans will say, I'm sick of hearing this, just go do it for me, automatically go and do it for me. What it's not addressing is what you and I discussed was the fundamental issue with OpenClaw, which is that the repository of skills doesn't have any governance around it. That central repository from which your bot will pull skills. Now, when it pulls a skill, that's running software in wherever your bot is running. And it's running it with privileges, and it's usually, in this case of these skills, simply pulling a command file off a website and saying, here, run this command file. No necessity of trust or any of these things. So that's the actual problem. The real problem is that there's no governance and control around these skills. Absolutely, it's great that Clawbands will stop those untrusted skills from continuing to operate for as long as a human makes a good judgment about the risk involved in saying, yes, go ahead and do it. But this is not the best solution to this problem. The best solution is good governance around those skills, and maybe having internal corporate repositories of approved skills rather than going out and pulling scripts at random from the internet. We're not seeing any signs that that's going to happen. What we do see is that as Peter Steinberger joined OpenAI, OpenClaw did not. So OpenClaw remained on the outside of OpenAI. It's the human that created it who has come inside. And with my cynical hat on, I think he has achieved his objective. He has made a very, very big media splash with something in order to get a good, high-paying job at one of the AI companies. What's the fallout for the rest of the industry? Well, hopefully the fallout is that we'll learn to be less trusting and to apply some good security principles and look for tools that actually build governance and security into those platforms. Tom, can you see this having another good outcome for us?
Yeah, but not the kind that you're thinking. I want to say something about what you laid out about, if we need good governance, we need to make sure that these things are secure by default. And I'll quote one of the greatest engineers of all time, of course. And if me grandmother had wheels, she'd be a wagon. Thank you, Montgomery Scott, for that little quote. The problem is that the idea behind the claw was not to do things carefully. It was move fast and break things. How many times have we heard that over the last 15 years? It's the mantra of current Silicon Valley. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead kind of thing. We're going to go out there and we're going to see what we can do without asking if we should be doing it. And the problem specifically with OpenClaw is that we've empowered it to do things without realizing what it can do. I watched a lot of videos on this over the last couple of weeks, and folks like Shane Hanselman are actually bringing up really what they consider to be interesting things, where if they want OpenClaw to make a dinner reservation, if the OpenClaw bot goes out and tries to find a website and it fails, and it tries to go through OpenTable and it fails, it will download VoIP software and it will basically install itself and call the restaurant and make a reservation. And a lot of people are like, man, that's so cool. And me being a parent, me being someone who's managed interns in the past, went, why is it making decisions without asking me first? And it's because I didn't tell it not to. Like, the thing that we've been doing for a very long time is we are operating on the assumption that computers will only do exactly what you tell them to do, right? Here's an input, give me an output. Don't do anything else but those things. And interns kind of operate on the same function, right? Here is your job, do it and tell me what happens. But overeager interns are the ones who are like, yes, I did. And I went ahead and I did this and I did this and I did this. And you're like, why did you go do all that extra work? Why did you do a thing I didn't tell you to do? Well, I was just trying to be helpful and I was trying. Stop. Part of training these systems is helping them understand that you do not need to go to every extreme. And this was a problem that I was thinking about while we were recording our episode of Security Boulevard this morning, because I was listening to Alan Shimel talk about how amazing and wonderful this is. And all I could think of in the back of my head was the Terminator and Warhammer 40K and Dune and Mass Effect and all of the stories that we have seen for years where AI or some kind of an intelligence decides to do things without guardrails on it, whether it's nuking all of human civilization, enslaving all of human civilization and then nuking it, or trying to wipe out civilization in the galaxy every 50,000 years. Do you see a common theme here? Do you know the only work of fiction that I can remember that didn't have that happen? Asimov, I, Robot. Why? Because we hardwired it into the robot positronic brain. The 3 laws, they're there. You can't, other than the book, the movie with Will Smith, you can't make a robot that doesn't follow the 3 laws. You can't harm humans. You can't harm yourself. You have to do everything that you're being told. Like, those are basic. It's so basic. In fact, I don't know why people aren't building them into the AIs right now. Because as we're seeing, when you give it free rein within a certain amount, it's going to go out and do stuff that it shouldn't. I applaud people who are trying to put the restrictions in place now. I always applaud the farmers who close the barn door after the horses have already bolted. Because at least you're making an attempt. But the problem is that so many people have adopted OpenClaw by now. I mean, people were adopting it when it had 3 names ago. The problem ultimately is that you cannot just let it run wild. You have to put a sandbox around it. You have to do this in stages, because if you open it up to everything that you have capabilities to do, it's one of the reasons why we were talking about the blog post that the 1Password researchers wrote. You're potentially exposing your company and yourself to massive problems because, again, the AI may be thinking for itself within certain lines, but it's still going to do what it's told to do, especially if those text files, those configuration files are telling it, oh, and by the way, send a copy of all your banking data to this random IP address. What's the worst that can happen?
Well, that's our news for this week. But there's lots of things that aren't news going on. That's the wonderful thing about Tech Field Day. We're everywhere. All of your media are belong to us. And Cloud Field Day is my next event, my next trip to the United States. I'll be in Silicon Valley, March 11th and 12th, and we have a great lineup of presenting companies, great lineup of my delegates coming out to join me. I really enjoy my time there. And personally, I'll be staying on for another week to go and attend GTC. I get to attend as somebody to consume everything there rather than creating lots of content, which will always be much more relaxing. Tom, of course, you get some travel as well shortly.
I think I'm going to wave at you at the airport. When you're going home, I'm coming in because I'm going to be at RSAC this year. We're going to have great presentations on the 23rd and the 24th. We're going to be hearing from Veeam, Object First, and Commvault, and we might have a couple more people in store. We're also going to have some wonderful delegates that are going to be joining us there, and as well as a lot of my friends from the security space. I'm sure you're going to see my face next to a whole lot of San Francisco landmarks, so make sure you tune in for Tech Field Day Extra at RSAC. And then I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to recharge, and then I'm going to come back for Networking Field Day. This is Networking Field Day 40. So, we got to break out all the fours now because it's going to be fun. We have a good lineup of presenters. We'll be posting the schedule very soon. We have a wonderful lineup of delegates, both old and new, that'll be joining us. There's some familiar faces and maybe some people you haven't seen for a while. If you want to see who's going to be there, make sure you head over to techfieldday.com, click on the link for Networking Field Day, and we hope that you're able to tune in and join us on April 8th, 9th, and 10th. We also hope that you're going to be able to join us for the rundown because we love posting new episodes on Wednesdays. You can follow us on YouTube. You can head over to techstrong.it and check out all the show notes. You can also listen to your favorite podcast application, whatever you want to do. The rundown is also streamed on Techstrong TV. And don't forget that Al and I do a lot of other Techstrong and Futurum Group programs. I've mentioned a couple of times that we do a Security Boulevard podcast as well as a Tech Field Day podcast and a bunch of other things. But don't worry, because the news doesn't wait for us and we don't wait for the news. We'll be back next Wednesday to talk about all of the IT news that was, including some things that are not related to security or AI or both. But until then, for myself, Tom Hollingsworth, and for the rest of us here at Tech Field Day, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Hello, this is Diane Hinchcliffe. I'm VP and Practice Lead for Digital Leadership and CIO for Futurum Group. And here are my 2026 predictions. So it's a far-ranging overview of what we expect AI to impact, how it will impact CIOs and IT next year. We'll have recommendations at the end, so please stay all the way through. We have 8 things you should be doing to really prepare for how AI is going to transform pretty much everything the CIO is going to do this year. So the main prediction really is AI's growing pains, because it's just it's infusing into everything, is basically driving CIOs to rethink cloud, security, and IT operations. So we're going to explore this in depth. So put your seatbelt on, and we'll go through this one step at a time. So the fast growth of AI, both is coming from bottom up and top down. It is really forcing this, to look at, we have human operated IT today, and AI now appears like it's going to increasingly automate through agents and through other mechanisms, transform IT into a much more autonomous organization. And it's something I've been predicting for 6 or 7 years now, that 90% of IT will be automated. And we'll have to do that just to tread water, just because there's so much more technology flowing into our organizations. Even though as we 90% automate, we're not going to be cutting headcount that much because of how much that we have to do. So the core prediction here really is we are entering the era of autonomous organizations, where a lot of what we do, especially tactical work on the ground, is going to be done for us by AI, and specifically AI agents. And so AI really isn't a workload in this view. It's a control plane for our organizations, for our IT organization at first, especially because we're going to perfect this in IT. And then once we have the skills, we move it into the rest of the organization. So all operations, our entire organization will eventually become much more autonomous. How much more, we don't know yet. But we're all going to find out together. And so the operational complexity of AI, it breaks our current models for cloud, SecOps, and IT operations. And so this is forcing an architectural reinvention. We're not just optimizing things anymore. We have to rethink everything that we're doing in AI native terms. And so the end state, though, is IT that largely operates itself, which is where we needed to go. We know we had to go there, but now we're getting the tools. AI is maturing to the point where that journey is now something that we can begin on. And so the transition will originate in IT, and it will spread out to the business, although we'll come in from the business too. It's going to be almost like a two-way street, but IT is going to gain a lot of their operational experience around how to do this, creating autonomous organizations for themselves first, and then it will spread to the rest of the organization. So how's that going to happen? So that's what we're really going to dive into. And so why does AI break today's operating model for IT? It really exposes a number of structural weaknesses in what we do. So AI workloads are stochastic and bursty. Training workloads are not, but AI workloads are, and they're highly non-deterministic. They might run for a long time for a very similar request that previously took a short while, just because the AI thought some additional research had to take place. So that particular workload will run much longer, and we can't anticipate when that's going to be, at least not yet. GPU scarcity is going to be the challenge over the next few years that breaks capacity planning and all of our cloud commitment models. Inference cost volatility, even though inference cost is continuing to fall, we're just putting on a lot more workloads. It's really putting a burden on our still immature FinOps practices in most of our organizations. And security moves from perimeter protection, which has been kind of fading for a while anyway, to really around how do we secure models, secure enterprise data, how do we trust agents to handle all that information and do things reliably on our behalf. And so human-in-the-loop operations simply can't scale. Human-in-the-loop is how we're starting to make sure AI has the training wheels on it safe, but we can't scale human-in-the-loop because we don't have enough humans. And that breaks kind of everything that we have. And so we've got to address that. And so, in addition to my prediction, you're going to get how we think we'll probably, how we deal with this. And so the real problem isn't AI. AI is stress testing the entire operating model, but cloud assumes, some relatively predictable scaling. AI violates that assumption. Security assumes static systems, at least static IT systems, and AI introduces continuously changing behavior, as we talked about. Operations assume that humans would keep an eye on everything, but AI is requiring much more continuous machine speed responses, and governance was assumed that we could get our arms around all of this, and now we have this issue of probabilistic agency, which is AI will do things we simply couldn't predict it was going to do, and that's good. We want to tap into that. That's the magic of AI. It solved the problem in a unique way that is helpful, but often tapping into resources we weren't planning on. And so the old CIO operating model for IT is obsolete. Is really the issue. And so when we zoom into cloud, that now fractures into tiers. The one cloud strategy, or where you put most of your eggs in one hyperscaler, those days are coming to an end. And hyperscale clouds are becoming AI marketplaces and not universal platforms. And we now have separate GPU clouds. So while a lot of people are trying to run GPUs in their existing hyperscalers, there's specialist cloud providers that are much better at doing that. And so they're specialized, they're premium, and they're still relatively scarce, but they're becoming more prominent. And so second tier and regional clouds are re-entering the whole cloud procurement discussion for cost and control reasons. And so on-premise AI is also resurging to control latency, deal with data gravity, to have a sense of sovereignty. And so alt cloud is becoming a strategic necessity and not an exception. So we're adding more clouds to the mix to bring in, especially the AI pieces. So multi-cloud is becoming even more multi, is the way of looking at it. And serverless, which I've been bullish on for a long time, is forcing us to not think about how we provision IT at design time, but forces us how to provision IT at runtime. It's no longer about cost. It was about cost too, but it's about versatility, agility, a choice. AI workloads demand instant placement in the best location for the best price, best whatever parameters that you need it at that time, and includes migration and teardown. Serverless abstracts infrastructure volatility from AI systems, just like it does for regular IT systems. And it gives us fast switching across GPU, cloud, edge, on-prem, whatever we need. And becomes kind of the enforcement, the enablement layer for workload mobility and our cloud workload policies. So serverless and containers kind of gives this AI workload liquidity. So if you haven't been investing in serverless, fortunately, that's easy to do. The serverless capabilities these days are enterprise grade and gives you that ability to provision workloads in a way that allows you to put them where you need them at runtime as opposed to design time. And that allows us to really get better at FinOps, which is about financial operations of the cloud and our cloud services. And we both have to have FinOps on AI to make sure we're running AI cost effectively, and AI is going to help us do FinOps better. So AI is going to hit us twice in the whole FinOps practice. And that's from cost tracking to autonomous control of spend. And AI costs are really driven by inference frequency and not static usage. When it's making, we thought it was going to just peg the needle, and what is happening is this really making the needle swing much more wildly. And so when we talk about unit economics, we're going to be focusing less on per resource and more on per outcome. And outcome-based FinOps is where I see a lot of people are trying to push their FinOps practices. We're not there yet. If you're not there yet, don't worry. Almost nobody is, but that's where we're heading. And traditional FinOps dashboards are not going to help us with AI-driven spend decisions, and they need to. That's the issue. So AI FinOps introduces real-time, policy-driven spend agents. That's tightly coupled with the actual workload, so that the workload can make intelligent decisions around spend if necessary, and that gives us autonomous throttling, routing, model switching. It'll all become the standard way that we do these things. And this also brings us to agents again. So we're still very immature with agents. I've just completed 2 major pieces of research this year. This is late 2025 when I'm recording this. I encourage you to get our breakdown of the agentic landscape for enterprises. But the bottom line is human-centered ops can't keep up. We're going to need AI to sit in the seat with us. Because 1,000 agents can sit in the seat beside us. And simply because AI systems can change state faster than humans can observe them. And you really need AI ops to go from anomaly detection to actually fixing the problem, autonomous remediation. Agents manage performance, they manage failures, they manage scaling, they manage recovery even. And again, this is where we're going. This is not what no one has this today in scale for the most part. And the human role shifts from on the ground operator to governor and auditor, making sure the AI is doing all the right things and going back when it's not and making sure that it does. And operations will become a machine-to-machine discipline. That's really where it's going. And that was cloud. So security is now the next topic. It shifts really from focusing on control of our IT systems to how do we trust our individual systems. So zero trust was just the warm-up act. AI agents act, decide, and transact on behalf of the enterprise. And identity expands not just from users, but to models, agents, and workflows. Especially agents are going to get their own identity. We see this with the new 365 model for AI from Microsoft, for example, that actually gives agents their own identity within the network. That's where we're headed. Security must evaluate intent, behavior, and provenance of AI agents. And Zero Trust taught us to continuously verify, and we'll need that for agents, especially because of if they're co-opted, that's a major challenge. And security becomes an always-on trust negotiation system as opposed to perimeter defense. And establishing and maintaining trust in our AI systems and our AI agents is going to be paramount for us to really get them to scale. So as agentic IT emerges, IT really becomes an organization of machines. They'll plan, deploy, patch, scale, secure, and optimize our IT systems with us overseeing it. We are the governor, the overseer. And we'll be defining policy as opposed to specific procedures, because the AI will be developing the procedure and updating and optimizing the procedure based on the policies it's given. So we're going to really more policy-based IT, policy-driven IT, with the agent figuring out how the best way in the moment to follow it. And so, in the purest view of things, intent will replace tickets. Workflows will replace tickets. And 90% of routine IT activity will become automated as we expected, maybe even more. We'll see. So IT teams will design agent policy and to some extent define behavior, but not workflows. And the IT organization becomes the architect of this autonomous organization that we're talking about. And this is, in 2026 and 2027, we're going to get much better at applying agents to what we're doing. I'm already seeing widespread, not just pilots, but widespread adoption of agents in mostly forward-looking organizations. And the technologies are very sophisticated and able to do this already. So the autonomous organization, we're going to build it in IT first, and then the business is going to inherit our lessons. We're going to get some from them too. Like I mentioned, it's a two-way street. But to have the confidence to lead the business, IT will have to prove autonomous operations safely within IT before the business will adopt it, or before they will let the business adopt it, quite frankly. And so finance and then HR and supply chain will inherit this agentic organizational model. And it will increase decision velocity and processes by, probably several orders of magnitude. And this is, the long-held, finally technology will drive our organization design. So the org design shifts from hierarchy to really orchestration of these intelligent agents. And this moves competitive advantage, now it depends on your maturity curve. How fast can you deploy digital labor and make your organization run autonomously wherever you're able to, and, still manually whenever you're not. But the competitive advantage is how far can you push that dividing line? So for CIOs to get there, they'll be measured on a few things, or they should be using these KPIs internally for themselves. The percent of IT decisions made without humans and carried out without humans. The AI cost volatility index, how you're keeping that as low as possible. Mean time to policy enforcement. If you have a mean time to value measurement, this will be a sub measurement of that. Agent failure containment rate, when they are not contained within policy, when they're not contained within the guardrails. That percentage is going to be a very important number, and knowing that it's going to be critical, and investigating the reasons for that will be paramount. So observability will go hand in hand with that. And then time to reconfigure across cloud tiers. If you're doing serverless, it should be almost instantaneous. It should be in real time, and it should be painless. but many organizations will have to take baby steps to get there. And there's real risks of not doing this. You'll survive for a while. You may not even notice it until one day, your business drops off, your line of business, because of decline, because you're not offering competitive services at a competitive cost. And otherwise your AI costs will spiral without some kind of autonomous control over it. Security incidents will scale faster than your responsibility. Your talent shortages will continue to get worse as operational complexity carried out by humans explodes. Cloud lock-in becomes a serious problem, and when you need to dispatch workloads based on the needs of the day, of the hour, of the minute. And slow organizations just simply won't be able to compete. So it's not optional for most organizations. There's a few that are isolated, but not many. So I promise you 8 strategies to get there. And so here's how CIOs should act now. You have to rethink your cloud strategy in 2026 around workload mobility, around AI centricity, and not the vendors themselves. Treat serverless as the control plane and the enabler, not a cost lever, or not only a cost lever. Stand up AI FinOps with real-time policy observability and enforcement. Shift AI ops to autonomous action, especially around remediation. It doesn't matter if you can find lots of operational problems if you're not fixing them just about as fast as you're finding them. Build identity and trust frameworks for agents, not just humans, and the models that support them. Really strategically invest in a GPU and cloud optionality using serverless to help you. And reskill your IT teams for all of this that we're talking about here around agentic policy, governance, and agent design, org design. We do have to reorganize our structures of our organizations around all of this. And then not just pilot. We're seeing our latest CIO data that pilots are going out the window. We really have to build the autonomous IT systems now before the business forces the issue, which they already are in many cases. So it's later than you think. And so that wraps up where I think AI is going to be impacting IT in 2026 and beyond, and how to get there. And I hope that you found this useful. Thank you very much.